Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK back at you with another video here to break down the 10-game NBA main slate on Wednesday. This one should be a wild one. If you guys are new, I do cover content for daily fantasy sports, NBA, NFL, and full player props. The sponsor for today's video, that is going to be Parlay Play. Guys, if you're not on Parlay Play, you can use the code DKDFS or the link down below for a $100 deposit match bonus. But how it works is you're building out slips of player props. They do have alt lines for basically every player as well. So you can kind of mix and match here with different multipliers and all the different sports they offer are up here. So definitely would recommend it. My best advice, as always, is get on as many of these DFS/prop sites as possible. And then when you do want to place your prop bets, you can search for which one offers the best value. If you're a first-time user and you click the link or use my code and deposit, it does help support the channel. So would greatly appreciate that. And if you guys are looking for more content, you can check out my premium linked in the description. All of my content over on OS Ales. And offering 40% off any package. So check that out, guys. You can use the code DK40. I tweeted it out as well, but use the code DK40 for 40 if you're a first-time user, 40% off any package on OddsShopper Tails. All right, let's recap tonight and then get into the breakdown. So DFS night, solid, nothing crazy. It was kind of a weird two-game slate, obviously, because the massive blowout in the first game, the Celtics could not miss. I thought I was looking pretty good. Excited, low on Pritchard, going to play, all the blowout minutes. 1 for 55 for no reason, right? He shot 1 for 55, and no, I'm not over-exaggerating. Peyton Pritchard shot 1 of 55. Go check the stats. Sorry, my brain's kind of fried. I just wrote a Twitter thread for a couple hours, a prop thread. If you guys are interested, trying to do that every single day for Twitter. So got it for every single team, broke it down to go check that out. But yeah, so that was pretty annoying. And then in the late game, DiVincenzo started the game like 1 of 10, missed both free throws. Did have a pretty good third quarter there. Yeah, so still cashed in tournaments. Again, Anthony Davis and Tatum kind of carried me. McBride was someone I was not fading. Yeah, so that's basically the recap there. And then I had to show you guys this, man. I'm still frozen, man. I literally was frozen for like 20 minutes straight. DiVincenzo, again, we talked about the first half, right? He shot like 1 of 10. He missed both free throws. He just could not hit the broadside of a barn. Had a good third quarter, comes in, plays the whole fourth quarter, doesn't get a stat. He had 16 PRA through 3 quarters. Nothing in the fourth quarter. To chalk a 6x for me on Underdog. I mean, it's just incredible, right? And if you guys are a new user, get used to this, right? Because there's absolutely no one on the planet that runs worse than me, and everyone knows it that watches this. Honestly, though, this is really painful. I straight bet DiVincenzo PRA too. Got hooked in that. So that was not fun. Not fun. I was like doing the prop thread. I saw, he's got 16 PRA through 3 quarters. He's easily got this. Go back, check after I'm done doing the prop thread. 16 PRA still and played 31 minutes. Incredible stuff there. But all right, enough of the tilt. Let's just get right into the video. So start off here, the Pacers and Pistons. This one should be a pretty high-scoring game. Isaiah Jackson is questionable. We'll keep an eye on that news. If he misses, I'd feel a little bit more, or Miles Turner should get a slight minutes bump because the backup 5 then would probably be James Wiseman, or if they want to go small ball like Jarris Walker or maybe like Obi Toppin. But yeah, rotation for the Pacers should be Haliburton, Siakam. Starters going to be Haliburton, Nembhard, Naismith, Siakam, Turner, with Mathurin off the bench, with McConnell off the bench, with Shepherd off the bench, with Toppin off the bench, and then with Jackson backing up Turner if he does play. But yeah, I think any of the top 3 guys look pretty good here for the Pacers with Haliburton, Siakam, and Turner. Turner was pretty aggressive looking for a shot in the preseason. Again, I think he does have a pretty high ceiling here, especially if Isaiah Jackson is out. As far as the mid-range options go, no real strong takes there in Mathurin, Nembhard, Naismith. We know McConnell's going to play the backup point. He'll be a good point per minute player, but again, the price is up. Obi Toppin, if there's no Isaiah Jackson, could play like some small ball 5, possibly. He's a good point per minute player, but yeah, that's about it for the Pacers. Move on to the Pistons. The Pistons, Noah Thompson, he is out for a while. I think he has like a blood clot or something. Yeah, so he'll be out for a while. Starters, well, you're going to see for sure, in my opinion, Cade, Ivy, Tobias, and Duren. The fifth starter, I mean, it could be Beasley. It could be Tim Hardaway. My guess is one of those two. But yeah, 8.6K for Cade, I think stands out as a pretty good price. He, I think, is going to take another step forward this year for the Pistons. So definitely have some interest in Cade. Duren at 7-3 should play, 30 plus minutes, assuming no foul trouble. And then Ivy had a pretty good preseason as well. I think he's a reasonable player in the mid range. Other guys that will be in the rotation, probably Sasser, Fettuccine Alfredo, which is Simone Fontecchio. Again, Hardaway / Beasley. And then Isaiah Stewart's going to play the backup 5. Stewart, again, played the 4 last year, but he's basically going to be playing the backup 5 this year. He does look better when he plays the 5. Just a question of, could he play a little bit alongside Duren? Maybe. It's possible. All right, Brooklyn and Atlanta. So Brooklyn, no Daron Sharp, no Bogdanovich, no Trenton Watford. Starting lineup should be Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Claxton. I think they'll bring Ben Simmons off the bench. But yeah, Claxton did not play at all in the preseason, dealing with a hamstring injury. I think he could be on a limit. Also think they will somewhat take it easy in the minutes for Ben Simmons. But Ben Simmons was decent in the preseason as far as point per minute goes. Cam Thomas should be leading the way offensively for this team. He's going to be leading the team in usage. Like the upside on him, but not a guy that's going to do a ton of the peripheral stats, but he will shoot a ton. Schroeder, reasonable play there. Cam Johnson had one huge game in the preseason. He went for 30 plus points. Obviously a bit of an outlier. Dorian Finney-Smith, fine. Again, he's more of a 3-and-D guy. You'll get Clowney in the rotation, playing some backup 5. You'll get Jalen Wilson in the rotation. Maybe a little bit of Shake Milton / Zaire Williams. Not a ton of interest in those bench pieces. For Atlanta, so no Kobe Buffkin. Starting lineup, in my opinion, should be Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, and Capella. I think they like bringing Bogdanovich off the bench, but there's a chance he could start too. And then off the bench, you should see Bogdanovich, Roche, Nance, and Okongwu. But I'm really high on Jalen Johnson, 7.8K. It's one of my favorite plays of the slate. I think he's going to have take a big step forward this year. He had really good numbers in the preseason. I want to say it was 17, 7, and 2 in 24 minutes a game. I think he's going to play mid-30s minutes, so I really like Jalen Johnson here. Trae Young, again, the offense is basically a 2-man game with these two, so no issue with Trae Young there. The bigs, Capella, Okongwu, expect them to kind of split the center position. Kind of tough to prioritize either. Don't mind Bogdanovich. Again, there's no more DeJounte Murray, so I expect Bogdanovich to have a bit of a higher usage this year. But that's about it. Larry Nance, 3.6 is relatively cheap. I think he's okay. He's going to play more of the 4, though, backup 4. Cleveland and Toronto, so no Max Strus. Probably will get Okoro shifting in the starting lineup. So starting lineup should be Garland, Mitchell, Okoro, Mobley, Allen. Then you're going to get LeVert off the bench. You're going to get Merrill off the bench, Niang, and Dean Wade. Maybe a little bit of Tristan Thompson playing the backup 5. I also think Evan Mobley could play some backup 5. Looking at players and the price points, I don't think anyone stands out, but I would just say the top 4 guys are firmly in play here. Garland 7-3, Mobley 7-7, Allen 7-8, Mitchell 8-7. Really good matchup for them. Toronto should be one of the worst teams in the NBA. LeVert's too pricey off the bench. Okoro, assuming he starts, is playable, but we know when he plays alongside the starters, he's a pretty low usage. Let's move on to Toronto. So Toronto, pretty bad team. No Barrett, no Olynyk, no Bruce Brown. The starting lineup for this team should be Emmanuel Quickly, Grady Dick, Agbachi, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl. I expect a ton of usage here for Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly. Both firmly in play. Both have a pretty high ceiling. Scotty Barnes in one of the preseason games almost had a triple-double. Quickly in his first game back had 10 assists in 24 minutes. Again, he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. And then I like Jakob Poeltl. This team is pretty thin with Olynyk out. The backup 5 is probably going to be like Bruno Fernando, or they could play a little bit of my boy Boucher as the backup 5. But Poeltl had a decent preseason. I think they'll probably lean on him a little bit early on. So I do kind of like him here in the mid-range. Value-wise, Grady Dick and Bocce both playable. My boy Boucher should get decent minutes on the bench. He's a good point per minute player. Definitely think he is viable. Orlando and Miami. Orlando known for running a pretty deep rotation. Starters should be Suggs, KCP, Franz, Paolo, and Wendell Carter Jr. with Cole Anthony, Mo Wagner, Isaac, Anthony Black, Gary Harris off the bench. That's my expectation for the 10-man rotation. Not the best matchup here. Not a ton that stands out for me for Orlando. I think Paolo's an okay contrarian play. Not much interest in Franz at that price. Suggs, I think, is reasonable at 5-1. KCP is too pricey for me. I think Isaac's an okay value. Isaac's a good point per minute player. He's probably one of my favorite plays in the Magic. But yeah, it's just kind of a gross team, gross game too. Two teams that play kind of slow, good defensive teams. For the Heat, no Josh Richardson. The starting lineup should be Rozier, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, Jovic, and Bam. You're going to see Hawkins on the bench. You're going to see Duncan Robinson off the bench. You're going to see Highsmith off the bench. You're going to see Burks off the bench and Kevin Love off the bench. That's some expectation for the 10-man rotation. Maybe one of those bench guys get cut out. We'll see. But yeah, nothing that really stands out to me for Miami either. Bam, they do want him to shoot more threes. He has been shooting more threes in the preseason, but I just don't think there's anything that really stands out here. Miami, a relatively balanced team when they are fully healthy. So, just not a ton that stands out. Milwaukee and Philadelphia. So no Chris Middleton. Giannis should be good to go. I'm expecting the starting lineup to be Dame, Gary Trent, Taurean Prince, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. You're going to see Bobby Portis on the bench. You're going to see DeLon Wright on the bench. You're going to see Connaughton off the bench. And then probably a little bit of like Andre Jackson or maybe AJ Green, AJ Johnson. One of those guys could play a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think Giannis looks good at 11K. Going up against Philadelphia. Yeah, I think he's one of the safest spend ups of the board. Obviously, going to stuff the stat sheet. So Giannis looks good. Dame's reasonable, but I think I'd rather get to Giannis for a little bit more. Brook Lopez, kind of indifferent on him. Bobby Portis is going to be a high usage player off the bench. Always have interest in him, but the price feels about right there. The value, Gary Trent at 5'2". Okay, if he knocks down his shots, could pay off the salary. Taurean Prince, low usage, more 3-and-D guy. Don't have much interest in these Bucks value pieces. Now, Philadelphia, I would say probably one of my favorite teams to target with no Joel Embiid and no Paul George. So I'm expecting the starting lineup to be Tyrese Maxey, Eric Gordon, Kelly Oubre, one of KJ Martin / Caleb Martin, and then Andre Drummond. So Maxey, 9K, should just dominate the usage for the team. Sure, that has the ball in his hands a ton. Yeah, I like the ceiling quite a bit on Maxey. I think Andre Drummond is one of the best plays here in the mid-range. I'm expecting him to play high 20s, low 30s minutes. He's a phenomenal rebounder. One of the prop bets that I bet earlier today was over 10.5 rebounds, but multiple units on that. That is now up to 13.5, and I think it could get bumped up to 14.5 even, but we know Drummond's a really good point per minute player. As long as he avoids foul trouble, I think he's a really good play. I'm expecting Kelly Oubre to kind of be the number 2 in usage behind Maxey. I think he's a reasonable option there at 6'4". The other guys I expect to be in the rotation, you're probably going to see, or Lowry will play the backup point. You're going to see, whichever one of Caleb Martin / KJ Martin does not start, obviously he'll play off the bench. Yabusele is going to play the backup 5, could play a little bit backup 4, and then maybe a little bit of Reggie Jackson. I mean, in flat man price, Yabusele I think is a little bit interesting here. Again, he is basically kind of the small ball 5. If something happens to Drummond or Drummond gets in foul trouble, a min price Yabusele I think is a little bit interesting there. But yeah, let's move on to Charlotte and Houston. So Charlotte, my expectation for the starters, no Mark Williams. Josh Green's questionable. I expect it to be LaMelo, Josh Green, Miller, Bridges, and Richards if Josh Green plays. But yeah, looking at the price points here, LaMelo sub 9K. He's going to be the do-it-all guy, obviously, for this team. So I like the ceiling on him quite a bit. Brandon Miller was really aggressive looking for a shot in the preseason, but 7K. Feels about right. No real strong taste there on Bridges either. I think Nick Richards is a good value. 4K Nick Richards without Mark Williams. Not like an amazing point per minute guy as a big, but solid and again, cheap. So I think Nick Richards is a really good value here at 4K. And then off the bench, I expect to see Grant Williams. I expect to see Trey Mann. I expect to see Micic. And then probably Shalhoub, however you pronounce his name, and maybe a little bit of the absolute dust of Taj Gibson. But yeah, I think again, Nick Richards stands out as a good value there. Josh Green 4-2 if he does play and start, reasonable value. Trey Mann even off the bench is okay at 3-8. Expect him to chuck. So yeah, let's move on to Houston. Houston's a pretty deep team. Steven Adams questionable. We'll keep an eye on that. But starting lineup is going to be Van Fleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, and Şengün. Off the bench, you're going to see my boy Tari Eason. You're going to see Cam Whitmore. You're going to see Thompson. You're going to see Reed Shepherd, and then you're going to see Steven Adams. I expect 10 guys. assuming Steven Adams plays, if he misses, Lando could play the backup 5, or they could just go, Jabari Smith as the backup 5 and go a little bit small ball and cut it to 9-man rotation if there's no Steven Adams. But again, pretty deep team. The only guys I'm really confident will play big minutes will be Şengün, Green, and Van Fleet. My boy Şengün, I think, looks really good here. Sub 9K, going up against the Charlotte Hornets. I think he looks really, really good. Green, Van Fleet, both reasonable options. Not as high as Jabari Smith. Would rather get to the guards at similar price point. And then the bench unit, I don't think I can get to Thompson at 6'4" off the bench. My boy Tari Eason feels a bit pricey. Whitmore's okay at 4K. Again, he's going to shoot when he's out there. But again, this team is deep. They are a deep team, so that's the issue kind of with Houston. Move on to Chicago and New Orleans. So Chicago, expect the starting lineup to be Giddey, Kobe White, Levine, Pat Williams, and Vooch. Off the bench, you're going to see Lonzo's on a 14 to 16 minute limit. Ayatasumu, Buzelis, probably a little bit Torrey Craig, and then Jalen Smith as the backup 5. Looking at players in the price points, I like Vooch at 8.3. Should play 30 plus minutes. Pretty high floor. He looks pretty good. Levine at 7.3 feels a little bit underpriced. Josh Giddey, 7-1. It was a little bit up and down in the preseason, but we know he's a stat sheet stuffer. Don't think I can get to Lonzo, even though he did play well in the preseason. Again, 14 to 16 minutes, can't go there. Last guy to mention for me would be Jalen Smith, the 4-2. Good point per minute guy. Should basically just play the backup 5, basically whatever Vooch does not play. He's got power forward eligibility as well, so I think he's a decent value play. Moving on to the Pelicans, so we got to keep an eye on some news here for the Pelicans. Trey Murphy out, Alvarado, Zion, and DeJounte questionable. Now, DeJounte, it was personal, and I think he will be back. Zion's actually dealing with an illness, so we'll monitor that. If there is no Zion, obviously like DeJounte, Ingram, CJ all look way better. But starting lineup, are the Pelicans, are they going to try to start a small ball lineup? Because, they could try to start DeJounte, CJ, Ingram, Zion, and Herb Jones. Or maybe they take maybe CJ out of the starting lineup and start a little bit bigger lineup until Tyson there. I'm actually curious to see what the Pelicans do for starting 5 here. But as far as players in the price points too, I think the two guys at the top be the preferred options. They both play. That would be DeJounte at 8.3, who's down the ball in his hands way more, and then Zion Williamson at 8.1. But I want to keep an eye on the starting lineup. If Daniel Tice starts at the 5-4K, he's a solid value. Off the bench, you're going to see some Alvarado. You're going to see some Hawkins. Hawkins had a good preseason. He's in a chuck. I think he's an okay value option. Messi, I think, will play a bit as well, the rookie. Let's move on to Memphis and Utah. Memphis. So no Jaren Jackson, no Vince Williams, no Gigi, no Kennard, no Cam Spencer. Starting lineup should be Ja Bain, Marcus Smart, Aldama, and Edey. Off the bench, you're going to see Clark kind of split the center position with Edey. You're going to see Laravia. You're going to see Pippen. And you're going to see Conchar. That's going to be the 9-man rotation, in my opinion. Ja Goat in a great spot here, 9.5. No issue if you want to spend up for him. Bain at 8K reasonable as well. Not really looking to Marcus Smart at 5'9". I think both bigs look pretty good here. Edey at 6'2", Clark at 3'7". But I think Clark is way easier to get to and one of the better values on the slate, in my opinion. So I'm pretty high on Brandon Clark there for value. Scottie Pippen will play the backup point, 4.1K. He's viable. A 3.3K Conchar, I think, will play a bit, is, I think, interesting as well. So you do have some options here from Memphis who are pretty shorthanded. For Utah, so expectation, no Collier. Expectation for the starting lineup should be Keontae George, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Hendricks, and Walker Kessler. In the preseason, basically, John Collins was strictly playing the backup 5. And then you're going to see Clarkson on the bench. You're going to see Mills on the bench. And then probably some Sensabaugh or Cody Williams. That's what I expect the rotation to be. But look at the price points here. Lauri is the guy with the high ceiling on this team. He was a bit up and down in the preseason. He had a horrific game his last preseason game. He shot 1 of 12 or something. But he's the guy with the high ceiling. The guards all look pretty similar here. Keontae, Sexton, and Clarkson. No real strong takes there. Collins, he plays on the bench, probably tough to get to. Hendricks, I think, is an okay value play at 4.7. But yeah, that's it for Utah. Let's move on to Phoenix and the Clippers. Grayson Allen expected to play. Noah Kogi. Damian Lee probable as well. The starting lineup should be Tyus Jones, Beal, Booker, KD, Nurk. And then off the bench, you're going to see Grayson Allen. I think we'll be on a limit. Royce O'Neal. Monty Morris, Mason Plumlee playing the backup 5, and maybe a little bit of Ryan Dunn for defensive purposes. far as the big three go here with Booker, KD, and Beal, all viable options. I don't think any of them stand out, though. I guess if I had to pick a favorite, it probably would be KD. My boy Nurkic, they've been trying to get him to shoot more threes this year. He was 2 for 4 from downtown in the preseason. I think he's a reasonable play here, good point per minute. Probably play somewhere in the neighborhood of like high 20s to low 30s minutes. Tyus Jones will play the point guard position. I think he's another relatively safe play there in the mid-range. Not a ton else, though. Again, Allen most likely will be on a limit. Pass on Monte Morris. I think he'll just play a little bit. Plumlee will back up. Nurk. Royce, fine. But again, don't expect huge minutes for him. Moving on to the Clippers. No Kawhi Leonard. Clippers, I expect the starting lineup to be Harden, Norm Powell, Terrence Mann, Derrick Jones Jr., and Zubats. And then off the bench, you should see Kevin Porter Jr., Chris Dunn, Nick Batum, Coffey, and then Kai Jones as the backup 5. I'm pretty high on Harden here. Again, he's going to have a much different role this year than last year. He's going to be leading the team offensively, going to have the ball in his hands a ton. So I'm pretty high on Harden there at 9-2. And I really like Avicii Zubats as well. Have some money on his props. I think he's going to have a much different role this year as well. I expect him to play 30 plus minutes. And yeah, expect a lot of pick and roll with Zubats and Harden. So those two, I think both look really good. Norm Powell is going to have a much higher usage rate this year, especially with Kawhi Leonard out. 5.8K with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. I like him in the mid-range. Not really looking to Terrence Mann at that price point. Derrick Jones Jr. I'll pass. I do have some interest in KPJ off the bench. He played well in the preseason. Decent point per minute. So do have some interest there in Kevin Porter Jr. But that is basically it. I mean, Kai Jones, flat man price, expect him to play the backup 5. But I do think Zubats should play 30 plus minutes. Finally, Golden State. Golden State's a team I expect to run a very deep rotation, probably the deepest rotation in the NBA. Steph Curry available. I'm curious to see what they do the starting lineup. Do they start Draymond at the 5? So if they do, I think the lineup would be Steph, Podziemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond. But again, Jackson Davis could start. This team is very deep. And then you have Buddy Hield is going to play. You're going to have Melton's going to play. You're probably going to have some Gary Payton Jr., some Slow-Mo. You got Moody. You got Looney. This team could realistically play 12 guys, and I would not be surprised. I think they're going to run 11-man rotation at least, maybe 12. So it's a pretty deep team here. But offense should be run through Steph and Kuminga. 8-5 for Steph, 6-5 for Kuminga. In a good spot. I think both are decent plays there. Draymond at 6-7. Fair play there. He will look a little bit better if he starts at the 5. Wiggins at 5-8 feels priced about right. But yeah, it's hard for me to feel really confident about a lot of these value plays for Golden State. Just because, again, I think they're going on a pretty deep rotation. If Jackson Davis starts at the 5, I think he'd be an okay play there at 4.9. But let's finish up here with Portland. Portland, my expectation for the starting lineup is going to be Scoot, Simons, Denny, Grant, and Ayton, with Banton off the bench, with Clegane off the bench, with Kamara off the bench, and probably some Jabari Walker. That's, I think, the 9-man rotation will be. The center rotation, it's going to be interesting to see what the split is there with Ayton and Clegane. Obviously, I don't think they're going to play any alongside each other. 7-4 for Ayton, 4-5 for Clegane. I mean, if you think Donovan could play like, I don't know, high teens minutes or so, I think he'd be a decent value play. Expect, the usage, a lot of usage to be run through Simons, Denny, and Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant had a good game in his last preseason game. I think Denny will have this ball in his hands a good amount. Simons, reasonable play there too. So all three of those guys I think are decent options. Don't feel as good about Scoot. I don't think he's a great real life player, but I do think he'll play good minutes for this team. I just would rather get to Grant, Denny, or Simons for a little bit more. Mara, okay. Banton should play some backup point. That's about it. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap up the video. As always, if you do enjoy this, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Really appreciate all support on the first video. Again, if you guys are prop betting, check out my player prop thread over on Twitter, all that for free. But good luck, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.